Well, it's time to get unstuck with the Dream Highway podcast. Hello, and welcome to the Dream Highway podcast, the show that's here to inspire you to go after your dreams and, most importantly, make the most of the journey every step of the way. This is episode 78, and I'm your host, Steve Pedersen. Today, my very special guest is Heather Chapman. Heather is a holistic performance and business coach and the owner and creative director of Own It Empire. She assists people to become the best versions of themselves and live their best lives through holistic, high performance and business coaching with her online programs and one-on-one VIP coaching. Heather, welcome to the Dream Highway.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful to be here to share my energy and knowledge with everybody.
Oh, yeah. And we're totally looking forward to it, too. So before we jump in, let's just talk a little bit about what is, some maybe little known things about you, or just who is Heather? Tell us some fun facts about Heather.
Yes, so I'm all the way here in Innisfil, Ontario, which is about an hour and a half north of Toronto, Canada. So
Okay.
absolutely snow blizzard here today.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And
we were digging out today as well.
Yeah, it's still going. And I've been really studying human potential performance for over 15 years. I definitely had my own health and business journey. I've been an entrepreneur for over a decade. I love helping people, and part of that journey has come because I was seeking answers to help myself, and the professionals that I sought didn't have them. So I really went on my own journey to figure out how to treat people like a whole. And that's really what got me to where I am now. And that's what's missing. We're not working with the physical and metaphysical. And there's a full holistic approach. There's much more to the human body and mind, body, and soul than meets the eye. So I'm just really grateful to help people really reach their full potential. And that all starts with deciding and owning your purpose, so that we can live a meaningful life on our own terms. And that's what I love to do, is really just inspire people to figure out what that purpose is, figure out how you can serve the world with it, lean into it, and design a life you love, because you came here to do what you wanted to do. And your definition of success is different than everyone else's. So let's just lean into that. And as Abraham Hicks says, joyful expansion is our mission.
There you go, man. Let's just call it an episode right here. I think that's all we need. Oh man, I am so excited to talk to you about this. This is I'm all giddy. But what's interesting is, as you were talking about that, what it triggered for me is I'm going through a master NLP practitioner course right now, and the guy who's teaching it is very emphatic about he feels very strongly about how in the psychological, the medical field, essentially, they come up with names for all kinds of different conditions or diseases. And then, of course, what's the next step? They prescribe medications for that. And he's super on the bandwagon against that kind of stuff. And that's what triggered me when you started talking about, hey, treating the whole person. Do you want to go a little bit deeper into that journey that you had, as far as what was it specifically that you were struggling with or having to deal with, that you were seeking out answers and then not really happy with those answers? What was that like?
Absolutely. And I love that you're doing an NLP course. I'm actually doing my first designation as an NLP practitioner right now. So I'm doing the prep work, and class starts tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. So super excited. And we'll be certifying our coaches by the fall as NLP practitioners. So I love that.
Excellent. Yeah.
Because that's the roadmap to your mind and consciousness that you weren't given in school. Right. So absolutely love that. And so the journey that got me here, the healing journey that had me go in search to be treated like a whole was, I died actually multiple times at birth. So we can start there. And I spent the first 2 weeks of my life at Sick Kids in an incubator. And then spent, my childhood seeing a lot of doctors and had health issues. And no one could help me. So 12 years old, my parents actually put me in a study at UFT. And so for 3 months, they analyzed everything: food, behavior, sleep, everything. And after 3 months, what they came up with was that it was everything related to the food. So all behavior issues,
Yeah.
health issues, everything was in relation to the food.
I
So
was going to say it was probably the food, right?
yeah,
And I don't want to interrupt, but what I'm
no.
curious about is because you said, now that's interesting that you died multiple times at birth. So we're going back to your mother's nutrition as well, correct?
Yes. And so I was 2 weeks late, so I swallowed fecal matter and came
Mm.
out backwards, and the cord around my neck, and it was a whole party. I just
Yeah,
thought I
right,
should
right.
let the whole
It,
world know I was here.
it was a trifecta of craziness. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and absolutely. And I do love that you say that, though, because we have to understand as nutritionists. I'm a certified nutritional practitioner, and I'll tell you why I ended up there. That we do recommend for 3 years prior to having a child, you are consciously healing your body, because you cannot give your child what you do not have.
Mm.
So it's actually not something to be taken lightly.
Yeah.
Building a human being, you're building a human being. Let's be serious about that. So it's actually
Man,
not
that's so
something that you
huge.
just want to do off the whim. It's actually something you want
Right.
to prepare for, so that human being has its best chance.
Yeah.
But so then, yeah, I'll leave that there. But absolutely. So definitely, it definitely was the food, and it was the sugar. So we also understand
Mm.
now, because I went to nutrition school and I understand what occurred was the overproduction of bad bacteria from the E. coli poisoning. And so
Mm.
what that led to was, gut issues. Your gut, we know, we can say the second brain, but let's talk truth. It's your first brain.
Mm.
So if you can't break down food and assimilate the nutrients that then need to cross the blood barrier and your blood-brain barrier, then you can't have the nutrients and the amino acids that are precursors to neurotransmitters and be fully functioning. So we label, as you were saying.
The brain needs the tummy.
Yes, exactly. It needs the intestines. It needs the whole thing, the
Yeah.
digestive tract. 70% of your nutrients are absorbed in your intestinal tract. So if that's not functioning, there's a whole sequence. So it all starts in the tummy. You're right. If
Yeah.
that's off, then the rest of the digestive tract is off. But we need to start to understand that then the sugar feeds the bad bacteria. So that's why the sugar had to go, so that we could re-inoculate and have the good, healthy bacteria coming in. And that's where all your sauerkrauts and fermented foods and the probiotics and what have you come back in. And then removing all dairy. So the major key factor was dairy. And I remember in one of my human potential performance classes in university, we were reviewing a study of children and behavioral problems. And they are literally showing you child on no dairy, same child on dairy, and the immense inflammation, which is a precursor to disease. And no one likes to feel like they're in their own pressure cooker, because then your threat load is, and your sensitivity is so high in your body that your patience for humanity is absolutely none. So you expect that child to behave properly. Anyway, yeah.
That's starting to explain a few things.
Yeah. And so it actually had to do with the dairy, and less than 40% of the population actually has the digestive enzymes to drink another animal's milk anyways. And the process of where that milk comes from and how that's unethical is a whole nother story, but right. We are very disconnected and disassociated from where our food comes from, and consumerism. And so that's something that maybe everyone wants to pause and go, oh, okay, this pen that I bought, where did it come from? This chocolate that I'm eating, is it still being made by slave labor? But that's for a different podcast episode.
Sure. Yeah.
Just a reminder, because that's one thing for me, is really to have people be conscious consumers.
Yeah,
Because
no,
otherwise
totally.
that could be the end of our world and humankind. And so that means your food that you're consuming has to be conscious, right? Where did it come from? Ideally, we go for that 100-mile diet. Ideally,
I'm sorry, the 100 what diet?
mile diet. So like it's grown locally, right? So
got it.
Even the ecological footprint of those berries to get over here, right?
Right. Yeah.
And the digestion, our body's meant to eat what's in season and all the things. And we want to eat whole food, right? So if you have to flip it over, unless it's like a medical grade, so like a protein shake, if you have to flip it over and read the ingredients, it's processed. It's not necessary.
Yeah. You know what? Let me ask you this, because I mean, I'm totally with you, and I've tried some of this stuff, and I've I think a few years ago, I was very woken up to, you mentioned earlier, sugar, especially processed sugar. I was like, oh my
It's
gosh,
not
I gotta,
necessary in the diet at all. 24
right. And
grams of sugar a day you're supposed to have. You can get that from your food, fruit, rice, potatoes,
yeah,
chickpeas,
right. Your
lentils,
body
carbs.
converts it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the
That stuff's
question
poison,
is,
that white sugar.
who are there people, are there communities that are living like this, like you're talking about? Like, is there somebody actually doing it so we can say, yes, it can be done? It's not just a pipe dream,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. And it's actually the new thing. And you're seeing a lot of people, they're starting to, there's a place, and I'm trying to think, and they live fully self-sustained.
Hmm.
I think
I
it's
would,
in Taiwan. There is, but
okay.
like there's one place specifically that I know that it's been like this for a very long time,
Hmm.
and it's like almost no outsiders. It's just like the families that grow up in this community. But this is actually the new thing. So people are starting to come together, and have 5 people who buy 100 acres, and they are growing their own food, and they all have their own families on there. And so like tonight, Steve, your family would make all the food, and then
Hmm.
Wednesday night my family would make all the food. And there's actually communities that are fully coming
Yeah.
together to live together, to support each other, because it does really take a village, right?
Yeah.
Like
That's
somewhere we
amazing.
forgot that, and let community go. But it's actually scientifically proven we need human interaction and touch and communication, and it is so important for our evolution. And so,
Hmm.
yeah, there are people who are living this way, and you know, it's not that we have to be a hippie and you can't have the new iPhones or this, that, and the other thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I just think it's,
Technology can come from across the seas. It's
yeah,
just our food.
yeah.
Let's homegrown our food.
And I just think it's the balance, right? It's what we do most of the time. So there's no make wrong. There's not like, oh, I love food. I ordered Indian food last night. Like I love
Hmm.
food. It's what you do most of the time that counts, because it's also about, what fun is if you're like living in this strict, rigid life,
Hmm.
you know what I mean?
Sure.
Just
Yeah.
joyful expansion and what's in the highest good of ourself and all involved most of the time. Just have that as
Hmm.
your, best
Yeah.
decision.
Yeah. Wow. Whew.
So
Man,
yes.
I'm tempted to be cynical, not about this, but about something else that's going on in the world right now. And I would say, like, without all of this cross, national trading, we wouldn't be able to impose sanctions on Russia. What I'm saying? So, we
Oh,
gotta, there's a lot more at stake here. Gotta have the government involved in everything.
yeah, yeah. And imagine you wouldn't need to have food or anything come from anywhere else. It would literally be in that 100, miles of
Yeah.
property that you and 5 awesome human beings bought, and you could fully live and survive off that. And you know it'll become a time where
Yeah.
hopefully, but yeah, it's gonna be a different world. The current systems have to become obsolete. They don't work anymore, like
Yeah.
that system you made in like 1950. Technology has grown more in the last 100 years than like all of history
Right.
combined. So
Yeah.
why are we
Yeah.
still working with the political system from 1900?
Well, sure. And one of the things you mentioned earlier, which also is something that my coaches or this coach is constantly harping on, so to speak, is this idea that, exactly what we're talking about, or the inner growth that's not being taught in schools, right? And
Mm-hmm. You do know the school system's designed to keep you in the box, slave to humanity.
yeah, well, yeah, I tread this topic very lightly because my wife is a high school math teacher,
So I
and
believe the teachers and education is essential. And I
yeah,
believe that they are the heroes of the future because they're building our next generation of leaders.
yeah,
I love teachers. I wanted to be a teacher, and I decided that that school system was broken, and thus I could not work for that. So I would
mm,
go and teach, and I do teach. Um,
yeah,
and instead, I have people who are in my program who are building alternative schools that are not indoctrinating children in the wrong way.
yeah,
So it's not the teachers. I love the teachers. They get into it for the right reasons. It's the
yeah.
political system that has its paws in the education that the children are receiving.
So we could, man,
Back to the journey.
yeah. Well, I was just going to say, we have, speaking of bringing some things to the table, man, you just, you brought a whole bunch of stuff to the table. Like, what do we feast on here? So this is
So
amazing. So let's do this. You are let's just talk about what you're most excited about, what you're doing right now about your dream. How are you pursuing your dream right now? What does that look like?
Yeah, so one of my biggest dreams was to have people treated like a whole. And
Mm,
that wasn't happening. And so I studied human kinetics, minored in bio and psych. I went and studied at an alternative nutrition school because my doctor told me I was the healthiest person he was going to see all day. While
mm,
there, I had multiple concussions, which thank God I was studying nutrition because then I was able to heal myself. Then I started to specialize to work with brain and spinal cord injuries. And again, realized that people are not being treated like a whole. The nutrition component was missing in that whole aspect. And we know that when we are under stress and fight and flight, the gut is one of the first to get triggered. And again, as we talked about, your gut being your second brain. So how are you going to heal if that is all off? So
mm,
for me, the biggest thing is that we start to treat people like a whole, and we're working on the self mastery and truly owning it. And that requires us to continue to grow. And so, as I said, like all those things, and then I
mm,
found Theta Healing, and I was able to
mm,
heal myself through a few meditations in a few days and do weights that I couldn't do for 3 years.
mm,
And I did it in 3 days. And I had seen every traditional practitioner previously. I
mm,
was in Toronto, top of my field, connected to all the most amazing practitioners, and I had to look at an alternative answer because I knew people had healed themselves. I've heard about it, and I knew that this didn't have to be my story for the rest of my life. And so
mhm.
thus enter Theta Healing, which is starting to work with the metaphysical. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's what
Explain a little bit more about that because some of the listeners might be theta. What theta? What now?
Yeah, so you
What
have
is it? What
different
is that? A
brain waves.
sorority?
Yeah, it could be. You have different brain waves. And so your theta brain wave helps access your subconscious mind. And so your subconscious mind is where your mental filters and your programming and your operating and your belief systems are. So you are a blank slate when you're born. You have unity consciousness. Everything that occurs outside of you, you take that in internally, all about
Mhm,
you. Why does my grandparents speak a different language and have an accent and I don't, is because we grew up in different environments. So you are going to be a product for your environment. And so everyone does their best with what they can for you at the time with what they have. And now this is your now operating system.
mhm,
At about 7, you then, building that personality. And from 14 to 21, you're really building in those characteristics and solidifying all those mental filters that you got before the age of 7. And unless we we're consciously are aware and decide to change them, then most of us are walking around like our 7-year-old selves.
mhm,
And here's some cool stats. So 90% of your thoughts, feelings, and actions are run by your subconscious mind. So you are on autopilot as your 7-year-old self. Think about that. That sucks.
yeah.
And then
Uh-oh.
98% of the day, you're in a trance.
Mm,
98% of the day, you are not consciously thinking, you are reacting based on the programming in your subconscious mind and the thoughts that you thought yesterday. So if we
yeah.
we look at the physical and the metaphysical, so Theta Healing has us go into the metaphysical to work with energy, with imagery, with the belief systems, with rewriting those. NLP is very similar as well, right?
Mhm,
The Theta Healing is there's also theta meditations that you can do, but what it is, it's going in and changing those belief systems. And we know that things change instantaneously. So I know
mm,
unless you believe you can heal instantaneously, you will not, because thoughts become things. We know that now. And each thought has a physiological response. If we look up the study of epigenetics, Dr. Bruce Lipton, then we can truly start to see that how we can heal ourselves and how that theta healing works. And so when we're a child, that theta brainwave is very active.
mhm,
As we grow up, it's less active. It's only most active right before you go to bed and right before when you wake up. And so that's when you have best access to your subconscious mind.
mm,
And so through a meditation of putting you in a theta brainwave state, you have easier access to that subconscious programming that you can rewrite that programming and put in new filters. But we must always replace. We can't just take something out. You have to put
sure.
something back in. Right. So we
Yeah.
learn to reframe and pick something that we would prefer, and then we put that back in. And Theta Healing goes a lot deeper. It even works with, we know that we hold the energy of 7 previous generations. And so you've got to go back and maybe do some timeline healing. There's timeline therapy and NLP and hypnotherapy. So there's a lot of new way, and they're not new. They've been around for a long time. But
Sure,
for a
yeah.
lot of us,
Yeah.
it's
We're just
newer
waking up to it.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And for a lot of us, it's newer information, and being able to access that subconscious mind, being able to rewrite our programming allows us to redesign ourselves and create the next version of us. Because can you imagine if you just stayed your 21-year-old self for the rest of your life?
Well, yeah, I guess going back to my wife, who's the teacher, she sees this all the time. She sees, of course, the kids, but then she sees the parents of the kids, and the parents are just as immature as the kids, a good deal of the time. One thing I wanted to mention is that people shouldn't be kind of freaking out or whatever, that, oh my gosh, I'm not 7 years old anymore. Like, is there a time, like, as we get older, the old saying, it's which actually is very interesting. It's, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Is that how it
That's a
goes? You
lie.
can't.
We now know, like, that is
Right,
the
right.
saying, right?
Exactly. And
I don't
how
know, is it 10
deeply is
years now?
that, right, programmed into us? But there's like, is age a thing? Should we even think about age?
I don't believe so. I really say age is a vicious rumor. One of my mentors and someone who I absolutely love just recently passed, Bob Proctor. He
That's right.
is
Yeah.
just absolutely an incredible human being. And last year at like 86 years old, he was still launching new companies. He was still learning. He was still teaching, like, no, I think age is a vicious rumor, and that's just a story and a reason and excuse people tell themselves to avoid, truly living their full potential.
Yeah. 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 And when you think about the, that first 7 years sort of being imprinted on us, it's still, short. I mean, that's still a relatively short period of time, that it's not like all is lost. You know what I'm saying? It's like, no, we just had a few different, things, and you certainly can teach an old dog new tricks. And,
Absolutely. Absolutely
even, yeah.
encouraging. We actually encourage you, please, please grow, because you're either growing or you're dying. In the words of Bob Proctor, you can,
Yeah.
you're either growing or you're disintegrating. Even when you die,
Ooh,
your body is still moving and disintegrating. So and I
true.
think it's Napoleon Hill who actually calls it mental suicide. If you're not growing and you're not aiming towards something, you're not evolving, then you're literally dying. Right there is no growth for you to stay where you are. You've done that.
This is for me, this is very poignant, just because I listened to this podcast where the guy was talking about death, like the last two episodes of their podcast. They've been talking about death, and, what do you think? People are asking, what do you think happens after we die, kind of a thing. But it was just so interesting that he was talking about how, in some cultures many years ago, how they would bury the body in with spices, wrap it all up, and they would put it in a cave until it essentially disintegrated, and then they would go take the bones and move it to a different part of the cave, kind of a thing. So yeah, we're constantly disintegrating if we're not growing, and thus the whole importance of eating healthy food, because you could be fooling yourself thinking that you're growing when you're really disintegrating, right?
Yeah, you're feeding yourself poisonous things.
Yeah.
And it's the whole thing. So it's mind, body, soul, and spirit, right? So how do we connect to spirit and connect to our higher self and our purpose? We meditate, we sit in silence, we journal, we study, we learn. How do you take care of the body? Wellness and fitness, right? Regular movement, good food, good sleep, good environment, good community. We know now fresh air. And then you've got your mind, right? And that's the ability to have a growth mindset. In Carol Dweck's book, she speaks, get rid of that fixed mindset. So you don't have to be that 7-year-old self. Just because someone said you're bad at math when you're 5 doesn't mean you're bad at math.
Right.
Turns
Yeah.
out every report card says Heather spoke too much. My teachers put me in the corner. They made me sit in the hallway. And you know how much people pay me to speak now? Like if you
Right.
if you actually went into the box that they want you to go into, every human being is different. Everyone learns different. And we just need to see people as a whole, as themselves. And so there's no need. I'm sure someone could have gave me ADD when I was younger. My parents could have put me on Ritalin. Instead, they put me in sports and gave me somewhere I could run faster. Right. Like
Nice.
we just, and different ways of learning. And so we must meet the person where they're at and treat them as a whole. And that's the only way that we can truly, be our best self and keep growing. Because it's not just about growing strong muscles or eating clean food or meditating all day or praying all day. It's actually a balance of all of them. Right. It's really finding that balance in our life and our harmony of all of them. And as an entrepreneur who's, had my own business for a decade and now fully virtually and have a team and a company, and I love what I do, and we're growing it. We also must understand that for a short period of time to build something like this and to really live that purpose, there will be a little bit of extreme for a while. Nothing came out of your comfort zone. Nothing good. You've already been there. So if you want to grow, you're going to have to go a little bit out of that comfort zone, a little extreme for a while.
Sure.
And we can't let certain things drop. That's the health, the food, the sleep. Because if we go for too long, then disease, all those things set in, right? So we understand as an entrepreneur, there is imbalance for a while for anything. You want to learn guitar, any of the things, you want to be an expert in anything, there's imbalance for a little while, but we must always come back to that harmony, balance of mind, body, soul, spirit. And then we can, go to the extreme for a bit, but bring it all back. So it's just so important looking at the whole.
Well, and I think part of it would be knowing that just being conscious, like intentional about the extreme. Like you're not just doing extreme because so for example, I'm just thinking like an analogy of driving on a highway, and sometimes what happens is that you get into this open road, nobody else is on the road, it's a completely smooth road. Before you know it, you're going like 90 miles an hour. Like, how did I get to be going this extreme, and it's because you're just checked out, but if you look around and say, okay, I am going to go 90 miles an hour because nobody's around and it's a really smooth road. So tell us a little bit about specifically your extreme. You said, so to get into your business where it was, what did that extreme look like for you?
It looks like I've been doing it for, 5 years now, 90-day sprints.
Okay.
And it's what I teach. And because then you have a deadline with a vacation and a reward and a break. And so I plan my life in 90-day sprints. And so I do quarterly reviews. I encourage and challenge everyone to do goal plan, do review every quarter. And that's how we create quantum leaps, because you have your destination where you're going, and the version of you now is not going to get you to that destination. It's only going to get you so far. So you need to constantly be maneuvering and building the plane in the air. And so that whatever is not working or what is working, you can, automate, delegate, delete, 10x the things that are working and improve for the next quarter. But if you wait until the end of the year, you lose inspiration, you lose momentum, and everything. So I encourage everyone to do it in 90-day sprints. So have your year plan, but plan it out for 90 days. And then, at the 2-month mark, you start reviewing, goal plan, do review, so that at the next 90 days, you can map that out. So I'm really excited that I'm taking my break now. I'm going to do a course for 8 days and doing the NLP course, and I'm going to take a couple days off. And I took a long weekend last weekend. So just, we're just ending a sprint. And then in April, we'll dive into our next sprint. So
that's brilliant, because I think, even in physical training, I hear that all the time, like run for a minute, walk for 2, or whatever the,
there's always recovery
intervals, right? Exactly. And now this is going to sound, a crazy woo question. Okay. I'm assuming that because you just mentioned April, that you do your quarters by a calendar year. I'm just curious if you've ever thought, or if there's any kind of evidence to suggest that there might be some sort of other kind of energetic calendar going on to consider.
So they say that with the energy, there are times, and they usually align with the calendars. So there's
Okay.
portals where more energy comes in and times of transition, and that's usually New Year's, fall, right? So it actually usually coincides with nature, which our calendar is pretty on with that. And I personally believe there's also one for the birthday.
Interesting.
So I actually, and then sometimes if things are changing really quickly, I might need to goal plan, do review sooner than I thought. And so I will goal plan, do review for 90 days from that time. So sometimes I will be like, for company wise, we're doing it by quarter, but sometimes I will be offbeat, off the quarter, because, you know, you have a vision, you have a plan, you have a destination, and we marry the destination and not the plan, because the universe is going to deliver often what you desire in a different package than what you thought it's going to come in. So you've got to be ready to pivot. And so often then I'm like, okay, shoot, I see it's coming in this package. Now it's time to pivot, goal plan, do review. And so I just redid, even though I had it already done in early January. The next quarters all the way up to July, we just redid them because, you know, got at a different plan. He was like, actually, you thought you were going to do that this year. It's all going to be done by the end of July, and it's going to look like this, and you're going to need to be in these classes. And so I was like, okay, we must go plan to review. So again, just don't marry the plan, just marry the destination.
Yeah. Wow. And yeah, wow. And even, man, I'm thinking destination. I mean, I know what's interesting about destination for me is like, you get to a destination or you start going towards a destination and you pick up stuff along the way towards that destination. And then you think, well, you know, that destination, like, maybe how dedicated, not should somebody be, but
what
I'm not what I'm not trying to encourage is that we chase, you know, every rabbit. That's not what I'm trying to say. But I think there are at some points where we sort of review and say, okay, is this sort of destination that I'm heading towards, am I still, you know, jiving with that? Is that still the best? Or have I learned something along the way? Or some people have actually said that, you know, God may put a dream on your heart for just to get you moving. You know what I'm saying? And then once you get moving, because you started moving towards that direction, something else became, you know, open on your radar. I don't know. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah. So what I always encourage is to have your purpose. So we call it your big, hairy, audacious goal statement.
Yeah.
And so the destination at the end of the year is just my yearly goal statement. That is a checkpoint on my way to my purpose. And so, you know, Eckhart Tolle has the book, The Power of Now. Abraham Hicks teaches the art of satisfaction, the law of now, right? So even if you want to create and have more, you must be here now, present and grateful for what you have now. Because if you are chasing the rabbit, that you are saying to yourself, I will be happy and successful when I have that. And that actually won't come, and you won't be happy and successful because you can only attract what you're being. So you actually have to practice the art of satisfaction now, practice being happy and grateful for what you have now. And what keeps you motivated and inspired and enthusiastic about life is what's coming up and where you're going. Right. So of course, also, as you evolve, you're going to play bigger, you're going to think bigger, you're going to set bigger goals. So maybe that destination at the end of the year, it might adjust, right? But it's the purpose that doesn't adjust. And for some of us, it takes us a while to really maneuver ourselves into that purpose. But we have to go out and figure out what we love and what's most rewarding for us, and what would be something that you would want to learn and then teach for the rest of your life. Like, what's that one thing? And so absolutely, we have to be ready to pivot. And then I do believe once you've really got that purpose, no matter what, as long as it's in alignment with that, you'll be on the right track.
Yeah. Ooh, man, this is good. So a question that I wanted to ask earlier is about just the type of clients that you work with. Um, do you think this kind of stuff, obviously Bob Proctor was a guy. Do you think this kind of appeals more to men or women or both? Is that a thing, or is that like age where like that just doesn't matter? What have you seen?
It's interesting actually that you say that. So in the communities, a lot of the communities that I have been in, they're more female based, but the
Mm,
coaches are female. So probably just attracting like attracts like.
mm,
And if you looked at when I was in Bob Proctor's masterclass, I would say it was
mhm.
pretty even. And if I looked at like his community, I would say it's pretty even across the board in his community. I also like to study with the Modern Mystery School and the NLP. And I'm thinking what I'm seeing, and just from my experiences, actually, is a little bit more on the female side.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Did you say Modern Ministry School or
Modern Mystery School.
a
There's
Modern Mystery? Okay,
yeah, yeah. Yeah, there's
cool.
different mystery schools across the world. They're ancient mystery schools. They teach you how to be magicians. Google it. The
Nice.
things you don't
Oh,
learn in your regular school.
yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And I think there's just maybe for, they say the masculine energy is very what so it's the rational, logical energy.
Mm,
The feminine energy is the divine, the flow. So just
mm,
maybe yeah, maybe there just needs to be more of a balance for that, for men to bring in more of the feminine flow, and they would be more open to accepting the
yeah,
possibility. But I can't say that it's more men or women. I think it's pretty balanced. I've had yoga
yeah,
instructors who are men, who are women, who are non-binary, however,
yeah.
people identify themselves.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. It's just, I think it's kind of an interesting thing, to think about as a guy, for me, just like, um, because I think at times there can be this question like, is there not necessarily, is there something wrong with me? You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
But like, I feel like I'm different than a lot of guys, where it's like a lot of guys are like, sort of the stereotypical, hey, let's just go to a bar and watch the game, kind of a thing. And
Yeah, yeah.
um,
Not into the personal development is still newer, right? So when my
yeah.
mom started teaching us like The Secret and working with metaphysics and universal laws when I was a teenager, my sister and I literally thought she was crazy. Like it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't the norm. She's like, there's
Sure.
cures for cancer. I'm like, okay, mom. She's like, read
Yeah.
this book. I'm like, fine. Yeah,
Yeah.
it turns out. Yeah,
Yeah.
there is. Yeah, stem cells.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyways, that's a whole nother thing. But yeah, I think there's just maybe a little bit more around that masculine energy, and we have to be open to bringing in that feminine. So you would maybe have taken on more of that balance, right?
Mm-hmm.
That balance of
Yeah.
that feminine and masculine. And I think for all of us, it's finding that balance, and at times you will need to be more of the masculine if you're running a team meeting, and sometimes you're training a client and you need to be more empathetic, you need to have that more feminine energy. And I just think we need to own that balance there.
Mm.
I think some people are just have gone off and are on the extreme of that.
Well, this is interesting because I think one of the things that's making me think is that who, so we're talking a lot about just core identity, like who are we? What are we? And if we identify, like we are not, like who we actually are is not male or female, that's just one of the expressions of the physical, but it's not necessarily who we are at our core. And but isn't that interesting how we identify with that? Well, I am a man, I am a woman, I am this or that, and this is how those people act in
Quote
society.
unquote in that box, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. How's that for a mind blower?
And I know that I used to have the tendency to be very masculine energy and very what so and very logical. And I have to always ask myself, like, how does this land for the other person? This is the very logical mind that would say it like this, but the other person has emotions, and their stories and all their past experiences will come up and go through filters when you say that. So it's also just like as a coach, being able to find that balance so that it lands properly for the other person. And I think there's a time for all of that, and it's finding the balance of that energy doesn't need to be how we identify anymore.
Yeah. Whew. Okay. I feel like we could, man, just keep going on and on with this. We're in deep.
Yeah. It's good. It's been a good journey.
One of the questions I want to ask is, so as you're going about your journey, you've created a lot for yourself and around you. What kind of obstacles? We've heard of some of the obstacles that you've gone through, but what are some obstacles that come up for you maybe now, or I don't want to say necessarily on a continual basis, but what are some of the, obstacles that you face?
Yeah, absolutely. So
continuing to pursue your dreams.
We're always going to have, I call them growth opportunities.
Yeah, growth opportunities. Yeah.
So we're always going to have healing or growth opportunities. So the opportunity is going to come to challenge you to get outside your comfort zone, to go to that extreme for a little bit of time and challenge yourself. There's no growth in staying and doing what you've already done. So if it's hard, awesome, go do it. But then when you're going on that journey, there's opportunities to heal too. So this goes for myself or for anybody. What is showing up for you regularly is something you need to heal. So the universe is going to give it to you once. It was like, I'm going to learn to protect my boundaries and not to give all my time away so that I have no energy left for myself. And then, so say that's a lesson I'm working on constantly. And then, growth.
Just hypothetically speaking.
Just hypothetically, just throwing it out there. And so then the universe is like, oh, you think so, right? Okay. So then everybody, this weekend, you said you were going to not do anything and you were just going to study. And then everybody calls and they're like, I need this. Would you do this? How about this? Hey, would you like? And so then you're like, okay. So the universe is literally saying, are you sure you want what you want? And you need to protect those boundaries. It usually does it about 3 times. Right. And then it's like, okay, no, I guess you didn't want that. And so we also have paradigms and self-images, right? So our paradigms are mental filters, that 7-year-old self, right? Those operating systems, those are the repeating patterns. So if one of the stories is what's wrong with me, which is often when things are occurring around us, our subconscious mind can take that in. So even though the parents were fighting when you were 5 and it had nothing to do with you, you took it in as there's something wrong with me. They're fighting because of me. So however that filter got there, it's there. And so for me, how it constantly showed up in the past was health issues because it was what's wrong with me. And I can go back and put a time on where there was a lot of emotion where, just hurt myself. And somebody said, oh my God, what's wrong with you? But the subconscious mind went, something wrong with me, must have this filter. So anytime you're about to break that current self-concept, you will attract whatever is going to be that mental filter. So a health condition, something wrong with me. Some people it will be finances. Some people it will be health. Some people it will be relationships. And so I always like to say, how we do one thing is how we do everything, and how it shows up one way in our life shows up everywhere in our life. So start to be an observer and go exactly what you said. How is that, how does that show up for you often, that challenge? Well, the challenge is actually breaking through this current self-concept so I can have the next version of my best life. But what that shows up as is a health issue, right? And so going through a breakthrough right now, so then my back spasm, that had, a migraine wants to come out, and you're like, actually, I observe what's occurring here. So I'm going to pause, take a day off, meditate, do my planning, do my reset, do what I need to do so that I can do that breakthrough. And leave those stories in the past. So we are co-creating. So nothing is happening to me. I am co-creating that. So there's not challenges that show up for me, right? I'm co-creating that. And that is showing up for me to heal or grow through.
That's wonderful. And it's fascinating. And it was funny because even as I was asking the question, I was like, that question just seems so silly. Like,
you were meant to ask it so that people could start asking, how is that showing up for me?
Yeah, exactly. Because I think, well, that's a question a lot of people are asking. So let's meet people where they're at, and okay, but let's start to look at it in a different way. Like, okay, these challenges that I need to overcome, they're not just, they're, yeah, exactly, growth opportunities for me to, that I'm actually creating. What That's so huge, taking personal, owning it, as you would
Yeah,
say,
you nailed
uh,
it.
and say, okay, what part am I playing in this grief that I'm feeling? Grief in the sense of like pain, obviously grief. I'm thinking grief like my mother just passed away a couple months ago. So there's that kind of, I'm not talking about that kind of grief, but yeah, that pain. I just looked at the clock. I'm like, whoa, time has really flown by here. I want
And
to,
grief, I just wanted to say that grief is something that each one of us need to deal with differently, and we actually have to take the time to deal with, because we are humans, and those are feelings and emotions that we need to pause and say, okay, let's label it. How am I feeling? Why am I feeling that way? And actually go through the process and release it. Right. It's not part of our habits of society to actually
yeah.
pause and feel those feelings and let that occur. And I had, my grandfather was like my best friend,
Mm,
passed away a few years ago, and it took me a couple of years really truly to fully come around and be able to, every time that thought of that person comes to your mind, it's of joy and gratitude
mm,
and not of loss, because there is no
yeah.
loss. Right? There is no
Mm,
loss. Everything is just a transition.
yeah.
And so they're not gone. They've just transitioned, and actually are doing the next part of their journey.
Mm,
Right. So they're here and supporting in every other way. And they would want us to be happy. Right. They want
yeah.
us to be happy. And so you have to go through those feelings so that when you do think of that person, it's in the love and gratitude of their story and their life and the blessings that they, give you birth, gave you
Yeah.
life.
Right.
And so that you can come from, when you think about that person, from that place of love and gratitude versus the lack
Mm,
and the missing of
yeah.
them. Right. So
Yeah.
let's actually feel our feelings. Let's do
Yeah.
that. Let's actually let those come up and come out instead of burying them, because
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
we are emotional beings.
Sure. Yeah. And even just like, hey, I'm feeling sorrow. That's
That's
great. I'm a
okay.
human.
Yeah.
I'm a human.
Yeah.
And that's, and not necessarily, I'm not sure if you can enjoy it, but like appreciate it in the sense that, man, look at me, look at this human experience that I'm having. I can experience the
Beautiful.
depth of this sorrow. And boy, isn't that great, as opposed to just kind of numbing the pain, and not feeling it. Man, I feel like we could definitely go on and on. What's a good highway metaphor here? Let's pull over to the rest area here and take a temporary break. Um, there was actually one other question that I did want to ask, and it's about your, so obviously you do coaching and you coach others to coach. How much is coaching, as far as receiving coaching, for you still a part of your journey?
Oh, absolutely. All good coaches have coaches. I've always
Right.
had coaches and
Yeah.
mentors. And so I'm, as you know, doing my NLP designation now. I have
Hmm.
the 2 more mapped out for the year to start certifying our coaches. I'm in Kelly Roach coaching program, this is my 3rd year. So that's a very high touch business coaching program. Kelly Roach just dropped her marketing conviction book. It's amazing. So check that out. Love her. She's amazing. And I'm studying, I continue studying the Modern Mystery School. I'm reading, I don't know how many books. That's actually one of my favorite things to do, is learn and then to teach what I
Yeah.
learn. And so
Yeah.
absolutely, all good coaches have coaches.
Yeah.
All people are constantly learning and growing and mentoring. So
Yeah.
yeah.
For sure. Love it. All right. So let's wrap it up there. Because I want to respect your time. I know you got some stuff going on. This has been so great. I thank you for coming on the Dream Highway podcast and just having this conversation and get people thinking. I mean, this has been, even in this last hour or so that we've been talking, has been an evolution of sorts. I mean, I felt it. I felt like I've had a lot of aha moments as we've been talking, which is great. That's that's what the Dream Highway is all about, man.
I
It's
love
just
it.
aha moments like, oh yeah. So
Yeah. And through
yeah,
these
Heather,
conversations, we get to bring that up for ourselves and for others. And then I just love it. So thank you so much.
yeah, for sure. So here's what we'll do. You're gonna we won't ask, people are probably driving or running or right now, so we're not gonna ask them to write anything down. We'll just say thedreamhighway.com/78, the number 78. They can go there once they're done and get all the links to your I think you have a free gift, right? That you on your
Yes.
website. Yeah, tell us real quick about that.
It is the ultimate success customizable habit tracker. And I know when I say that, I always laugh because I'm like, ooh, sexy habit tracker. Everyone's like, yay. But I promise you, your results are a result of your habits, and your paradigms are a multitude of your habits. And it
Mm,
takes 60 days to change a habit. And,
mm,
and as Robert Kiyosaki says, whatever you track improves. So
mm,
track your habits. And if it's not in your calendar, it doesn't exist. So put it on a habit tracker, make these, these habits a part of your new life, and the new version of you will be birthed through your habits. So
mm.
it may not be sexy, but it's going to be one of the best tools you've ever used.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that, Heather. We'll sign off for now. Thank you again so much for being a part of this. Looking forward to continuing our conversation online and in other ways. Want to thank the listeners for joining in. This is Steve Pedersen signing off from the Dream Highway. So long for now.
Thank you.